From the John Navita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now, here is Jim and Rich.
And off and running with another edition of, what are we? The Armchair Experts. Jim Leon, Rich Massaro, another hour of cogitations, ruminations, intimations, insinuations, allegations. Any other Asian you want to throw in there, except one that would get us all in trouble.
You always make me chuckle because I always think you get another Asian that I haven't heard in there every time you do this thing.
I'll think of one, but there's an obvious one, but we can't use that.
It's. I have to say, it's we're sitting here prior to the broadcast, and it's always an honor to sit here with the Hall of Famer John DeVita and the voice of the Rebels, Jim Leon.
John DeVita spinning the dials once again, trying to make us sound good. I don't know if anyone can do that for us. I don't know where we should begin today. It's kind of interesting. I have to tell you. With the news the other day, I happened to look at my Facebook feed, and I saw a posting from one of our classmates from Giles and Ridgewood, Kerry Cox, who said, "Bears suck, Cubs suck, White Sox suck, Bulls suck." Said, "It's a heck of a time not to be a hockey fan."
Yeah, there you go. Kerry always found the silver lining in the
and his only problem is he doesn't like hockey.
Okay, that's the problem. Hey, Jim, I was going to say the Kennedy assassination has always fascinated me and continues to fascinate me. And this is November 26th. We're going to be heard tomorrow on November 27th. The 50-year anniversary, of course, was the 22nd.
Yesterday, the 25th, was the day he was buried.
But I was going to ask you, what were you doing 50 years ago today? Or on Friday,
on Friday, same place you were. I was in Mrs. Lee's classroom. I remember going home for lunch, and the TV was on, and... In fact, Kevin Zaflick even asked me this when I posted something on Facebook. He asked me, "What were you watching?" And I said, well, you know what? I said, I seem to remember back in those days, CBS, NBC, and ABC were running soap operas.
Probably had soaps, yeah.
And my mother was not a big soap opera fan, so that wasn't on. So what was left? Bozo Circus.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was watching Bozo because what had happened, my dad was the breadwinner in the family, but at the point in time where they thought that both my brother and I were old enough to take care of ourselves coming home for lunch, my mom went out and got a part-time job. So I was home, and I don't remember my brother being home, so I don't know why I don't remember that. But I'm sitting there with one of those little fold-up tables eating my lunch. Yeah. And as soon as I saw the news bulletin flash on, I turned it off and went to school because if you remember, a couple of years prior, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
And every time one of those news bulletins would come up, it was a little alarming for me.
Yeah.
So I turned it off. I walked to school, and I'll never forget, I walked into the playground, and we, at that point in time, being 7th and 8th graders, we were in back of the school. That's where we came into, spent our preschool time.
Right.
And Michelle Lockman, who was not a fan of Kennedy, her family was strong Republicans, and I don't think that really should mean anything in this case, but apparently for her it did. Came up and was actually jubilant about the fact that the president had been shot.
I didn't remember that. Wow.
And so we sort of, I was with Denny Smith, I think, and Larry Ritzert. Those were guys I hung out with.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to hear that or believe it. So actually, I still walked into school at 1 o'clock, not believing what she said, even though, when you really connect the dots between the special report and her saying, yes, he was shot and killed, I should have believed it, but I didn't want to believe it. But then towards the end of the day, our room, you looked out. You looked at toward the plaza.
Yeah,
and the flag was at half
the
staff.
The flag on Weebolt's was lowered to half staff.
Right.
I remember that, and I don't think it was near the end of the day. I think it was somewhere around, probably around 2:00.
That's possible. Okay.
That we looked and saw the flag lowered to half staff.
Right.
And I think at that point in time we knew it. Since we were in 7th grade and our teacher was Mrs. Lee and her husband was the principal, well, she had the intercom phone
Right.
in her room, and she called downstairs. So I think at that point in time we knew it. There were people that were reminiscing on Facebook groups, especially those who went to Giles during that period, that said they went home early. I don't remember leaving school early that day.
I think what might have happened, though, Jim, is that I want to say, and again, my memory, obviously, it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think that John V. Lee came over the all-school intercom at about 3:00.
Yeah.
And we may have gotten out maybe 15 minutes early.
Maybe so. I know he said that I think he said they were going to be. I think at that point he said we will be closed on Monday, the day of the funeral.
Okay.
That I remember because I remember being home for the funeral. I remembered it being a rainy day that day. I did not remember it being as warm as it was. And they were talking about being in the 60s that day.
I
do remember.
I do remember it being rainy. I can't remember what the temperature was.
I remember. I remember when I got home. My mother had the radio on. My mother had the TV on. Was watching that. When the bulletin came over on 9. In fact, Kevin asked me, did they cut in, or was it announced during Bozo's Circus, or whatever? I said, I remember a cut in. I'd love to remember who read the copy.
I don't know.
But I can't remember. But my mother immediately switched over to NBC, and I remember Chet Huntley being on. If you remember Huntley Brinkley,
sure.
And everybody scrambling around. It was interesting. Again, just talking about WGN, it was very interesting. WGN Radio had a clip on their webpage of about a 12-minute segment when the first story came in, and Orion Samuelson, who is still with the station 53 years later, was on the air and was doing a program that they used to call Country Fair. It was the farm show.
Yeah.
At noon, and he's reading crop reports and weather reports, and is handed this. He said, and is handed this bulletin, and he reads it. And at that point in time, it's stay tuned for WGN for more details. So he reads the next crop report and the weather report for whatever state that was, and read the bulletin once again. He said at that point he was talking about, and he even talked about it on a separate clip after that. In those days, you had to have the musicians union, James Petrillo, the president of the musicians union. John's in the other room nodding when I said James Petrillo. When musicians were being put out of work, the old studio musicians that worked for the radio stations were being put out of work because of recorded music. Mm-hmm. If you played music, you had to have a union musician in the studio, and they became the record turner.
Okay.
And the problem at that point in time, when they thought it might have been appropriate to put some music on to wait to get to the top of the hour instead of doing this, the record turner was out to lunch.
Oh, okay.
So he said, I read the Iowa report and the weather, and I read the bulletin, then I read the Minnesota report and the weather and the bulletin, then I read the Illinois report and the weather and the bulletin, and then I went back and read the Iowa report and the weather and the bulletin because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
You had nothing to fill in any details on the report with, so.
Yeah, and the clip, they played music, and the clip at the top of the hour, Jack Taylor, who was a name from Chicago broadcast history, read the bulletin, what they knew, and that was the end of the clip. It was interesting, too. Samuelson told a story earlier that year or not earlier that year. In 1960, he was still working in a station in Green Bay. And Kennedy came campaigning during the Wisconsin primary, and he had a press conference at the Northland Hotel in Green Bay, and he attended it, and he asked some questions regarding dairy policy and farm policy and what Kennedy stood for regarding that, and got his answers and whatever. And afterwards, Kennedy aide came up to him and said, "Do you have a few minutes?" He said, "Sure." He said, "Well, the senator would like to meet you and talk to you about farm policy." So he said, "I went into the bar at a table in the Northland Hotel and taught President Kennedy farm policy."
And I'm sure when Kennedy went to the bar, he said, "Milk straight, no chaser."
Of course,
no doubt.
Of course. So that was an interesting time 50 years ago to think about that. And I remember when I got home. I got home, whatever time we got out of school. My mother sent me to the corner to the drugstore, probably Kruger. Yeah, it was Kruger's then.
Sure, Kruger's.
Said, "Go pick up a newspaper in case your father can't get one on the way home."
Okay.
So,
down in Grand Park, they called it the band shell.
Yeah.
Down there was
the Petrillo.
The Petrillo
yeah.
band shell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The old one, right?
Yes.
The one they tore down that was at 12th.
That's right. Yeah. Now they built a new one. I don't know what they call the new one now.
The band shell.
Very creative and clever.
Yeah, I think it was something.
shell.
Yeah. Well, then they have the newer one in Millennium Park.
Yeah. We used to do a remote broadcast from the Aragon Ballroom, and they used to broadcast the big band
big
music.
bands.
And, the station announcer, like Bob Bell, who was Bozo on WGN, he would always say, James Petrillo, he always mentioned his name, at the beginning, at the end of the broadcast. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, very.
So I see you have the paper open to Bulls news.
I don't know. This is like, I don't know. I watched last night. I watched a little bit of this game last night.
Which game was this?
The Bulls game last night.
Oh, who did they play?
They played Utah.
Did they win or lose?
They lost. Mm-hmm. And you have to keep in mind, and I have to try to find the NBA standings just to make sure. I believe that was Utah's second victory this year.
Oh, okay.
That was their second victory. Yes, they came in yesterday 1-14.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm kind of sorry to see that because an old favorite of mine from his days at DePaul is the head coach at Utah, Ty Corbin.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a longtime player, longtime assistant. And when Jerry Sloan stepped away, Ty took over. They lost. This is an early paper. You don't have the score, but they did lose last night.
Okay.
And you know what? I mean, I'm looking at names on this roster. I'm looking at the Bulls roster this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, if you haven't followed it or whatever, Derrick Rose tore the meniscus in his right knee.
Yes.
The other knee, opposite of the knee where he blew the ACL 2 years ago. Instead of having the tear snipped, he had it reattached.
Yeah, which is the longer process.
Which ends his season.
Right. You know what I was going to say about this, Jim? The first thing, we texted back and forth yesterday about this a little bit.
Right.
And one of the things I didn't say, my gut reaction is you put all your eggs in one basket, because there's a variety of things. Going back, I don't know how many broadcasts when we talked about the Bulls during the summer.
Right.
And people probably at that point thought I was nuts, but maybe I don't look as crazy now.
I thought you were nuts.
I had said the Bulls, not that they should shop Derrick Rose, but they should explore the possibility of, entertain any offers for trading Derrick Rose. Now, I don't know if there was something in the back of my mind. I'm not saying I could have predicted the injury, but there were some things happening, I guess, then that are coming to the front of my mind now that just didn't sit well with me. When we texted back and forth yesterday, I mentioned Marco Bellinelli and Nate Robinson. Now, with Rose gone last year, Those guys are scorers. Now, they're not in the category of Derrick Rose as players.
The roster was built last year for Derrick Rose not to be there.
Now, this year, it was built for him to be there, and we are not as deep.
No.
We're definitely not as deep. And now, the guy that it was built around is gone. And if you look towards the back of the paper, because I only got a real brief look at the paper, but as they do once in a while, the two columnists, Rick Morrissey is saying, well, you know what? Now, don't give up on Derrick Rose, basically. Still got to build the team around them. And Rick Tellender, and this is about the second or third time that I've agreed with Rick Tellender on something, so I'm getting really worried about myself here. But he's saying, you know what? Don't count on Derrick Rose. And I have to tell you, my gut tells me, and I'm sure that's, and I don't read Tellender, but I did read the headline. My gut tells me the same thing. How the heck now? And it's not just one knee. Now apparently the other knee,
right.
And this is all. You know what? This may not be right, but you know what? You're putting more pressure, I guess, on the good knee. What was the good knee? Now you blow that one out. The other thing is he's had other. I'm not going to say numerous, but he's had a number of other injuries, all dealing with his legs, whether it's
turf toe,
an ankle. I
think
he might have had a groin. So it's he's
got a groin.
Yeah, he's got a groin.
He's got,
but it's all those are danger signs, and you have to pay attention to them.
The quote, the first couple of paragraphs, right from Tellender's article. Let me say this with all my heart. I hope I'm wrong. Let me say this, I don't think I am. Derrick Rose, the humble, hard-working Chicago point guard, will never be the same.
I agree.
I'm really, really concerned about this too, because I just don't think he's going to come back. It's a mental thing too.
Well, I think Jim. Here's the other. If Derrick Rose was a big man, if he was a center or a power forward, I'd say. Maybe he can come back because there's a different skill set, if you want to use that term.
Yeah.
But his whole game is based on his legs.
And you're building your game, you're building your roster around a point guard, which basically is unheard of.
Well, yeah.
In the NBA, except Kobe Bryant maybe.
Yeah, well, and I wouldn't even know.
And he's kind of an off-guard type player, but. He's the guy that brings the ball up a lot. And by the way, the Lakers signed him for two more years at $48 million.
Well, here's the other thing, and I think we've talked again. We talked about this in previous broadcasts. First off, I don't believe that you can build a championship team around the point guard.
No,
I don't believe that. I
don't believe
it's ever
that
been
either.
Done. And the other thing I would say
it was unheard of when Jordan was here and they won 6 titles, building it around a 2.
The great thing about Derrick Rose is he's just a very aggressive, tough player. I don't question his toughness at all.
No.
But that great thing is also his biggest asset is also the biggest drawback because he's not a big man in terms of the NBA. So when you're going in constantly challenging the big guys, you're going to get knocked down and knocked around.
Yeah.
And he's just not that big. I don't care how many reps he does with whatever weight. He's not. His frame is just not that big, especially compared to the guys he's playing with. Mm-hmm. So and I agree with Tellender. He seems to be a really good guy and a fine player. But I just don't know that the Bulls should be counting on him anymore at this point.
And now you're going to have to look at what are you going to do with this roster now for the rest of this season, because you've got a couple of free agents to be this year. You got Luol Deng, and Kurt Heinrich are going to be free agents at the end of the year. Do you move them now? Do you try to shop them now and see what you can get? Do you try to move Carlos Boozer, or do you amnesty him after the season?
Well, my first reaction again, and I don't know all the ins and outs of the contracts and whatever, but I think if you when you're saying do you try to move them now, I think you move them at a disadvantage because everybody understands why you're moving them. So you're never going to get a really good deal.
You're not going to get the deal, but and Joe Cowley brings this up in an article, and I heard this yesterday, and I thought about it too. You had back in the 90s San Antonio being a very successful franchise and making the playoffs every year, and then they lost David Robinson in the 96-97 season to an injury, and they won 20 ball games.
Mm-hmm.
Who did they get in the draft that year?
Duncan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Championships came after that.
Sure.
They also changed coaches, too, at that point in time, around that time, because Greg Popovich took over. You have a very good draft class coming up. I mean, a lot of people are saying this could rival the 03 draft when you had James, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony. We have to talk about, I think here we have to talk about Thibodeau as a coach, because there's only one way he knows how to coach. Put the pedal to the metal.
Right.
Red line his players and try to get whatever it is, whatever he can get out of them. Do you lay off, try to essentially tank the season, get yourself a good draft pick, and hope for the best next year?
Well, first off, you're never going to get Thibodeau to agree to do that. So that's a problem.
Okay.
If that's what your strategy is, your coach isn't going to be on board, I don't think.
Right.
And the other thing is, I really don't know that. I hate to say this because he's a great coach. I think I don't know that I think this really makes Tom Thibodeau's future here as the Bulls head coach sort of iffy.
It is because one, this is not his mentality. I mean, his nature is to win games. Mm-hmm. Even not winning games and improving his team down the road is just not in his focus. His job, and a quote right here, my job is to coach the team. Whoever I have on the roster, that's who I'm coaching. Their job, and whether Derek is here or not, that's what they have to do. They always look at the players that are available. They have to study, which they do, and you go from there. As I said before, I love the team we have. I love the guys we have in this locker room. I think we have great character, we have great fight, we have great determination, and we love the challenge. You also have the issue, too, that you don't exactly have the best relationship between your head coach and your general manager.
Well, they keep saying that. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
As you're talking about his comments, I'm thinking to myself, again, I'm going to go back to putting all your eggs in one basket theory, and I'm not criticizing the Bulls management per se, because I think there's other teams who probably do the same types of things. But I don't think it's a good idea. And I also, as we're talking about, say, retooling teams, I go back to when the Lakers, and I'm pretty sure the Lakers had a good team. Jerry West was the GM, but they were sort of treading water.
Right.
I think the Bulls are in that position. I think
they're basketball. They're like in basketball purgatory.
They are. I agree with what Thibodeau's saying. I think the guys on the team are great. You got guys who are busting their butts, doing what the coach wants them to do, and that's a great thing.
And that's important.
But I think then it's on management to say, okay, we have a good competitive team. We're always going to be competitive with almost everybody, and we're going to be up there every year. But we want to make the next step. And what West was with the Lakers, the two things that he did almost simultaneously was make the deal with Orlando to get Shaq, and then drafted Kobe, who was never had
17.
played college ball, and had the foresight to see that was going to be a winning combination, and he was right about it. So I think what Bulls management or any management group that's in this situation has to do is have that foresight and take some chances, and luck, good fortune is going to have to come into play too. But I don't think, as much as I agree with Thibodeau, I love the guys on this roster. The way this thing has shaken out, I don't think this group is going to win anything.
This team cannot. Who's your big guns in the East? Obviously, you've got the Heat and the Pacers. Mm-hmm. This team is not stacked up to compete with them. And I think the fear is the Bulls getting caught in basketball purgatory, and somehow they managed to sneak in with a 7th or 8th pick, or 7th or 8th seed in the draft, not in the draft, in the playoffs, and wind up with a middle of the road draft pick. When you have a shot at maybe somebody like an Andrew Wiggins or a Jabari Parker, who I'm sure is going to be one and done this year at Duke. But boy,
yeah, it's going to be sort of a mess, and
people.
Thank God I'm not having to make the decisions.
People keep talking about, well, they're going to get they can get Charlotte's draft pick because they're still owed a draft pick, but it's contingent on so many things. And I really got a lot of people have a sneaking hunch that Charlotte's going to make the playoffs this year, and that means they would get to keep their their draft pick.
Okay. Is that Michael's team?
Yeah.
Is he still the owner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Charlotte right now, Charlotte's 7-8. You know what I mean? It's early in the season. Geez, there's only 15 games into the season. But a lot of people feel Charlotte has a great chance to make the playoffs this year, and that means they're going to Charlotte gets to keep their draft pick. Okay. And the Bulls, I think then the earliest the Bulls would be able to get it would be 2016, I believe, from what I've read. But anyhow, I mean, you got two problems right now. Essentially, you've got Rose out for the year. You've got Jimmy Butler, who's not.
Yeah, he's on the shelf for a little while.
They're not sure when he's going to come back. So what do you have? You had Tony Snell starting last night.
That might not be that bad of a thing.
No, you get him. He was the 20th pick. He gets. He gets a chance. He was kind of aggressive last night. Got 4 points in the first 8 minutes out there in the first quarter.
Well, here's a question. How about Tibbs has his standards, obviously, especially defensively, and everybody who comes in new says, "Geez, even veteran guys say it takes us a while to get on board with this and realize all of the different things that are involved with the defense." But now, is Tibbs, and again, I love Tibbs, but you know what? Is he a one-trick pony in the sense that he will not change? Or, based on the cards that are dealt him, will he change his philosophy slightly to get possibly more offense with, and I'm talking about the two new guys, Snell and Murphy? Will he give up a little bit defensively to get a little bit more offensively? I'm not saying he should do that, but will he do that? Should he think about changing his standards in this case a little bit?
I would think it would make sense for him to change his standards a little bit. Give these kids the opportunity to play and suck it up this year with the chance to make yourself better down the road. Whether you come back, whether Rose comes back, again, he's only 25 years old. Jeez, there's still an opportunity with a good rehab that he's going to be able to come back here again. I just hope he's not. The Bulls' answer to Kerry Woods.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's you may. I'm not going to say you're not ever going to see Derrick Rose again, because you will. But Derrick Rose, I think now is in a position where you're going to have to sit back and think, and you probably are going to radically change your approach to the game. I would think
you would have to. And I think mentally that's always going to be working on a player. You've had 2 serious injuries to your knees.
Well, here's another thing, Jim. Though here's a player who, now I don't care what your age is. You're essentially talking about 2 full years and probably even more than that off from competition. And I saw him play a little bit in parts of a couple games this year, and he would flash his old abilities, but there were also times when you could see that there was some obvious rust. Now you're going to talk about 2 years away from the game, and How are you going to come back from
Yeah.
that? I don't care what your age is. 2 years away from a game is a long time to be away.
I mean, you have to wonder what was working on him mentally, considering he was only shooting 35% this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a rough thing. I'm just kind of watching the clock and waiting for John to tell me to break the station. 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. We can figure out what to do. We can screw
I
around
can
here
figure
for
out
30
what to
seconds.
say for an hour, but for 30 seconds,
30
I'm sort of lost for a thought here.
I'm never quite sure what to talk about within 30 seconds. I mean, you doing anything good for Thanksgiving?
Other than working, no.
Okay.
Not
All
doing
right.
anything
All
good for
right. Well, that's
Thanksgiving.
it. All right. Station break.
You are listening to Armchair Experts on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center. And now back to Armchair Experts with Jim and Rich.
And we're back.
Well, wow, that's a really quick
Wow,
break.
wasn't that,
Jim, though, you told me you wanted to talk a little bit of Bears. Are you done? Are we not? You're done. Are we done with the Bulls?
I'm
here?
done with this. Is this was depressing. I mean, this was a depressing weekend when you think about this. I tried to watch the Bear game Sunday, and I was watching it with some at a friend's house, who has the Red Zone, the NFL Red Zone, on NFL, on the NFL Network in the Red Zone, which is essentially football for people with attention deficit disorder.
That's what you're telling me. I don't think I'd care for it.
And I kept telling him leave the channel alone. I got it in the corner, man. You look up there.
Yeah, right.
He's got his computer out so he can watch his fantasy team. What I saw on yesterday or on Sunday was yeesh.
Yeah.
The defense was terrible. Up until the end, when they took a couple of knees, they were averaging 10 yards a carry.
The Rams were.
The Rams were. They ended the day with 29 rushes for 258 yards.
Yeah. Jim, I was thinking about this on the way over, because I knew we were going to talk about the Bears. And quite a few years ago, when Otto Zeman was the coach of the Riverside Brookfield high school football team and had the, I don't know, he had a wide open offense. I can't, I'm not going to put a name to it. I can't put a name to it. But I talked to Mike and Tom Pagliaro was the head coach of Ridgewood at the time, and I talked to him and I said, Tom, I know you're never going to do this, but I have an idea. And he said, what is it? And I said, well, you know what? RB basically plays almost like a flag or touch football team offensively. I said, why don't you have 11 men standing? I said, and play it like you're playing a flag football game. You probably going to, I mean, there was other things involved in it. This is the basic part of it. And of course, there was no way he was going to do that. But several years later, when Chris Zach was the head coach at Ridgewood, they played RB and they had 11 men standing. And I talked to Pat Rossi, and I said, Pat, you stole my idea. He says, what are you talking about? I said, well, it was my idea to have the 11 men standing. And he says, well, we both had the same idea separately because I'm the one who put that defense in for that game. And I said, okay, I can accept that. And but I guess my point would be when you're getting torn up like that rushing, and you're really I know that I think I mentioned it to you or somebody else over coffee. Last week's game against the Ravens, when I read the recap of the game, Landon Cohen and Christian Izatupu.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
did a lot of the. They were the defensive tackles in a lot of cases. David Bass had a lot of time. Your favorite Cheeto Ozugu was in the game quite a bit.
I had that in a Mexican restaurant one night. Cheeto Ozuga.
My point would be, if you're short on defensive linemen, and obviously we've had some problems at linebacker with injuries, but you know what? What is wrong with, say, taking a Julius Peppers or a Corey Wooten, who are pretty mobile guys, and Why not stand them up? Why not do something a little bit different? Why not? Because the NFL essentially today is a passing league, and
Yeah.
you're already getting your butt beat running wise.
Yeah.
And what I would say is that's really interesting because the way I don't know, you said you watched the game on Sunday? Are the Rams are still a basic T team, or did they run out of the shotgun?
They were. I'm trying to remember. No, he was under the center a lot.
Okay, he was under the center.
Yeah.
But put it this way: when you run against a team that plays the spread, or they're in the nickel or the shotgun or whatever variation you want to call it, and you pretty much have one running back that they can hand the ball to. Not that they can't do other things, but it's pretty much narrowed down to that one guy. What is the problem with doing something a little different, especially when you're short on defensive linemen? And even with the defensive linemen in, you're getting beat up because they're, as you said, St. Louis, who was doing nothing rushing-wise, averaged 10 yards a pop on the ground. Why not do something a little bit different? Why not,
what they were having a tremendous amount of success with was misdirection.
Okay.
If you saw the play that Tavon Austin on the third play of the game that Tavon Austin scored, oh my God, it was an end around.
Okay.
He took the ball, started to head towards the left side of the left side of the line. Everybody was going that direction. He stopped on a dime, turned, and went the other way.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And they kept running in misdirections. And at that point in time, I was hearing the game on the radio. I really basically saw the second half, or attempted to watch the second half, in the midst of everything, in the midst of going back and forth between the red zone.
Interesting.
Jim, and I looked at this, and again, I think there's issues where you're wondering about the play calling. Somebody said they thought, well, it looked like the Bears were, here, I'm just looking at this. Mark Potash is coaching. He said the Bears looked like a team coached by an offensive coordinator. They had 10 penalties and fell behind 14-0 and 21-7. The biggest decision, going for it on 4th and goal at the 1, backfired. They read the play right away. It was very obvious they were going to try to run, and they had it read.
Okay.
And you know, what difference would it make? Well, maybe it would have been 42-24. Who knows?
Yeah, although I got to tell you, with what's happening on the defensive side of the ball, I would say the offense is doing what they're supposed to do, which is rare in the history of the Bears, at least as long as we've watched them. I would totally stay away from any criticism of the offense because I think the offense has been steady as it goes.
I think the offense has been steady as it goes. I agree with you. Maybe his play calling was a little bit questionable this week.
Well, you know what, and I think that can happen regardless. And also, when you look at it, if the play is not successful, of course you're going to question it. If it is successful, then nobody even thinks about it. But what I'm going to say is when you're talking about the Rams doing an awful lot of gaining on misdirection, I look at now somebody made the comment to me, you know what, our linebackers are playing terrible. And you know what, based on what you're saying and not having seen the game, but hearing that comment and based now on what you're telling me, I would say a lot of that would be on the linebackers. And it goes back to one of my pet peeves. There is such an emphasis on speed that I would say that against a fast team, misdirection is probably the way to go. Because once you have those really quick guys moving in the wrong direction, now, yeah, can they come back and recover? Sure. But, you know, you're already made 5, 6, 10 yards.
You've made your yardage.
So, and I think a lot of it has to do with the overall. Now, in this case, we're talking about the Bears, but it has to do with the overall way turns the game has taken over the years. And obviously, you need speed. But you know what? Sometimes speed is an overrated thing. I even when Ray Lewis, who I thought was a really great and going to be a Hall of Fame linebacker, had the opportunity to see him play a few times. I'll tell you what, a lot of times he used his speed to get where he thought the play was going, and overshot the play.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather see a linebacker, and I'll tell you what, I played that spot, and I think a lot of this was from playing on the street. But when I was in high school, it seemed that I always had enough time to see, and I don't know what it was, maybe it was a sixth sense or whatever you want to call it. I could see that play developing from the point of view of where the linemen were going, people in motion, how the whole thing was lining up. And I was never a super speed burner, but it was more or less a timing thing to get to the play. And I don't see that happening. And I think in linebacking play, that's a lot of it. Timing is the only word I can put to it.
Now, this past Sunday, I mean, Anderson, James Anderson, nothing special. Kasim Green had 6 tackles, and John Bostic looked lost.
Okay. I'll tell you, let me tell you, the first game I ever started as a varsity player was at Mundelein, my junior year.
Yeah.
I played inside linebacker. I was the high point man on the team because they used to do, you got 1 point for an assist, you got 2 points for a tackle. I was high on defensive points. I knew I played a lousy game because the whole game, it was the one time in my football life that I never knew. I always liked the coaches were speaking Greek that whole week. I never really understood the concept of what we were doing that day. And even though I was making tackles, I knew myself I was not in the right place a lot of times. So now you're saying Bostic looked lost. You're saying Green made 6 tackles. I guess my point would be you could make some tackles. That doesn't mean diddly squat to me.
It doesn't mean you had a good.
You could always be making the tackles,
Yeah.
but too late or in the wrong spot. You know?
I mean, there were still overall it looked to be too many breakdowns in the coverage. The defensive backs again, Major Wright and Chris Conti struggled. The defensive line was getting manhandled on the runs.
Here's
Peppers was horrible.
I got to go back. I love this. Everybody has been on Conti and Wright.
Major Wright.
Okay. I got to tell you, they are safeties. Okay.
You're the last line of defense.
You're the last line of defense. But you know what? If your safeties are getting run over by offensive tackles and guards or tight ends or whatever, guys that are too big for them to handle, and I don't know that this is the case, but if you're getting, if I guess the point would be, if your first 7 guys, your defensive line and linebackers aren't doing the job, the poor safeties are out there hung out to dry. And so they're getting a lot of heat for what they're not doing, but they're
getting the heat for the problems that are occurring up front.
That's my guess.
You bring it up. You bring up a very valid point. I don't know. It was just it was just a depressing side looking at the defense. Offensively, McCown did everything he could have out there.
McCown's doing a really good job. Very good job.
I have no idea what Michael Bush was doing out there.
Michael Bush seems to be having an off year, but I'm going to say this. Now, I still have confidence in Trustman, but I would say this: Forte has got the majority of the carries. To make a long story short, I just don't think they're using Michael Bush enough. When you have a big back like that, I think you need to get him in there other than just on the goal line. I think the goal line is really tough for somebody to specialize in because, the defense is obviously stacked against you. But I think you need to get Michael Bush maybe involved in a couple of series away from the goal line to get him into the game a little bit.
Maybe be your third down back when it's you have a running situation on third.
Something like that, or just give Forte a breather and let Bush have a couple.
Yeah,
of
now I know there was a little bit of concern at one point when Forte went out. It looked like there was an injury, and it may have been everybody thought at first, oh my God, and they put Bush in. Bush lost 5 yards on 7 carries for the day.
I saw Sports Jimmy the other day.
You and I had coffee yesterday.
He was lamenting the. He was lamenting the Bear. Woe is the Bears, and I told him, the Bears are going to the Super Bowl, Jim. I said, all we got to do is win 8 or 9 more games. And he's like, yeah. But you know what, though? I have to say.
Wait, what did Steve Dahl say one year? We're just a plane crash away from
The Super Bowl.
John liked that one.
John loves it. You know what, Jim? This does. I have to say this. We get sort of. We're on the air, so we want to say the things I think that a lot of times we feel that. And I'll use this term loosely, our competition, if you want to put it that way, because I don't think we really are competing with anybody.
I don't think they're worried about it.
They're not worried about us. But I think we want to say a lot of things that other people are saying, or we want to maybe say different things to be, have our own little niche. But what it comes back down to me, Jim, is it's a game. And you know what? I've seen the Bears or whatever Chicago teams. I've seen them play great, and I've seen them play lousy. But you know what? I just enjoy the game. And whether, if Matt Forte or Derrick Rose or Jay Cutler or whoever is not in the game, would I like to see those guys play? Sure. But you know what? It doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the game.
No. It's still a game, and it's funny. Dana's asked me at times, because we've made rumbles, I've made rumbles about wanting to move away from Illinois at some point in time, and she said, well, what do you do sports-wise?
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'd probably adopt, depending on what it was, I'd adopt a local team with one exception. I'll always be a Bears fan.
A Bears fan. Huh?
I'll always be a Bears fan.
Yeah.
I think that's something that'd be very difficult. The Cubs, I'll probably always look at them with a jaundiced. Yeah, John. With a jaundiced eye.
Actually, you're better off just taking off your glasses to look at them.
Maybe that's it. Maybe
then you don't have to watch it as don't have to see it as well.
Maybe that's the problem. I've been paying too much attention to them.
You know what the Bears logo is, don't you?
What's that?
It's always next year.
No, that's the Cubs. It's
the Cubs. I meant to
that's
say
the Cubs.
The Cubs logo is wait till 1908.
You know, Joe Gentile always told me he'll never see a World Series, and the man was right.
Yeah, I know. This is terrible. And by the way, I'm just happened to glance. Speaking about the Bears, the game on Sunday is not on the boards.
Who are they playing?
Minnesota.
Oh, Minnesota, right? Okay.
Minnesota. You got to figure. Just looking ahead to Thursday with Detroit and Green Bay, that's going to be an ugly ball game. Detroit lost an ugly game.
Yeah.
On there in Green Bay, with whatever the quarterback issues are.
Well, I saw. I glanced quickly at the paper before I got here. I see that McCarthy is not sure whether he's going to start Matt Flynn. To me, that would seem like sort of a no-brainer. Flynn seemed to come in and do well.
Flynn played well.
Yeah,
and I thought the big issue with Tolzien was, did he get hurt?
I don't know if he got hurt or I didn't know. I thought my impression was he just replaced him and put Flynn in to get the ball rolling. I don't know if he's hurt or not. Pardon me? Scott Tolzien from the Packers.
He did get hurt.
He got hurt. Okay.
That was the reason Flynn came in. That's what I thought I had heard. That's what I thought I had heard or attempted to read as the TV was being switched maniacally back and forth on the Red Zone channel.
There you go.
Just an interesting point, just talking about college football, I think we've talked a little bit, you and I have talked, we kind of follow Michigan State because Dana is a Michigan State alum. They are going to be playing in the Big Ten title game December 7th against Ohio State. That's going to be the first time. Michigan State has a really, really outstanding defense, and this is going to be the first time they're really going to be tested against a good offense.
It is, but we talked about this a little bit yesterday. But I have to say this: when you brought up the fact that they haven't played a high-powered offense, I think my response was they're really on a roll, and I'm not so sure that it's important that Ohio State is a better offense. I think a big part of it is the confidence that Michigan State will bring. And I'm not going to predict who's going to win the game.
No.
But I think Michigan State will play well, and I think their
Michigan
defense
State
will play very well.
And their offense is played very well with Connor Cook as quarterback. So, I think we need to finish up with something fun here in these last few minutes.
Sure. What is it there, James?
Okay, I hold in my hand here the Sporting News 2013-2014 college basketball all-name, all-American team.
Oh, wow.
Our first team at guard. We have 3 guards on the team. From North Carolina State, we have Stats Battle.
All right.
From Wofford, we have Indiana Faithful. From Towson, we have For McGlynn.
For?
F-O-U-R.
F-O, okay.
Our forward from UCLA is Wana Bale.
How do you spell Wana?
W-A-N-A-A-H.
Okay.
And our center from UTEP is Hooper Vint.
Hooper Vint.
Our second team. I love the names on the second team. We have Jordair Jet at St. Louis. We have a guy who can play guard and forward here. He's at Purdue. His name is Basil Smotherman.
Oh, God.
Our forwards are Claiborne McMath from Bryant.
Okay.
And Cruz Pinkins from San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you look forward every year to have a player that somehow has this in his name. From St. John's, we have God's Gift Achua.
Wow. How come he wasn't on the first team? God's Gift Achua.
Our third team, we have Ari Bibbins.
Ari.
We have Major Canaday. And I think this guy should have been with Basil Smotherman. We have, from St. Bonaventure, we have Andel Cumberbatch. At Charleston Southern, we get Sa Nimbley.
Okay.
And our center is McWisdom Badejo.
Oh, my goodness.
I think he should be playing with God's Gift, actually.
Yeah, that sounds good.
You know. And just to show you, we not only we have guys that just couldn't make it from these teams. Here's our honorable mention.
Okay.
We have Galen Buernick from Northern Arizona, Cortell Busby from IUPUI, Mo Alley Cox from VCU, Omar El Manasterly from Jacksonville, Derby Enos from Hawaii. You have this quizzical look. Stanton Kidd from Colorado State, Denton Kuhn from Princeton, Sanjay Lumpkin from Northwestern,
Okay.
Wadley Mom Premier from Ohio,
Wadley Mom Premier. Okay.
Devrin Muff from Eastern Kentucky, Zan Ricketts from Utah, Diami Starks from Bryant, and Hippolyte Safak from Memphis. Plus, we have all sorts of other teams that they managed to come up with. For just looking at there, we have here's the all team. You ready for this one?
The all team?
The all team. Are you ready from this one? From Washington, we have Andrew Andrews.
Oh, okay.
From Cal State Bakersfield, we have Dang Dang. From Campbell, we have Leak Leak.
Oh, my goodness.
From Ball State, we have Majok. And from Missouri, Kansas City, we have Shayok.
Hey. You know, I got to. That reminds me. I had a guy come off a plane a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the dispatcher tells me that he goes, his name's Lewis, L-U-I-S, Lewis. And actually, he says, I think this is a misprint, but it's Lewis. And I go, well, yeah, that's got to be, somebody just took that down wrong. So the really nice guy, he comes off the plane. I said, Lewis? And he says, yeah. I said, then, sir, is that your first name or your last name? He goes, both. I'm like, oh, my goodness.
Well,
okay. But very nice guy. But Lewis. I said, you're obviously he was Latino, but I thought his parents may have been fans of the Kingsmen or something.
You always asked, why didn't my parents name me Leon?
Sir James Leon.
I know.
Prince James Leon.
I know.
Jim,
and we can go with God's Gift at you. I could have.
Well, it's just now, and somebody would actually want to, not you, Jim, but people would actually want to sit here and argue that our society is not in decline. Give me a break. I think there's just quite a few drugs out there on the street. Or otherwise, how do you come up with these names?
I don't know. We have some other sub names that they came up with, sub teams that they came up with. We have the the They Might Be Romans team.
Whose team?
This is another NCAA players.
Okay.
This is the They Might Be Romans team, sub-team.
Well, I'll be
We have
interested to hear this.
Jerichius Bradley.
Jerichius. Okay.
We have Rantavius Gilbert,
Okay.
Christavius Gill,
Okay.
Yondarius Johnson, and Cartavius Kincaid.
So they're Romans team because they're all Eases.
You're right,
Yeah, okay.
right. Let's see what else we have. We have the Team Whole Foods. We have Jason Cheeseman,
Yeah.
Corn Elder,
You're making me hungry.
Preston Herring,
Yeah.
Aziz Leaks. He goes along with Leaks.
Well,
And Marquise Almond.
Jim, a corn though is not a name that is it's unusual, but there was years ago there was a heavyweight contender by the name of Corn Griffin. I believe he might have fought in his career. He may have fought Joe Louis. I'm not sure, but corn is, that's at least been used before.
Yeah.
Especially if you're from the country.
Especially if you're from the country. Let's see. We got any others that we can talk about here? I'm looking at. We still have 5 minutes to kill.
I have to tell you, talking about names, a name popped in my head about a month ago, and the name was Rosifus Sly. And I used to be a big fan. Wasn't a big Sports Illustrated guy, but when they would have their basketball season preview and their football season preview, I'd want to get that magazine because they had a night. It was a good issue. And I went to the internet to say, well, did I just make up this name in my head, or is this a name that I had heard before? And when I saw the little bit that they had on the internet about Rosifus Sly, I remembered that it was probably from Sports Illustrated that name stuck in my head. He was a forward at the University of Denver, and where he appeared on the internet was from a preseason preview from Sports Illustrated, and I think Denver might have been in the Big West or Big Sky or something at the time, and it was in the conference preview, but that name was so unusual that it just stuck in my head over this, and that was 30, 40 years ago, because this would have been the late 60s.
Yeah, I was thinking just a similar thing musically the other day. My car, we were out driving, and I have Sirius has offered me free satellite radio for a couple of weeks, just try to get me back. But
okay.
We happen to have the 50s station on, and they played a song by B. Bumble and the Stingers.
Oh yeah,
yeah, the Nut Rocker.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Dana had never heard of
not ever heard of B. Bumble?
She had never heard of B. Bumble and the Stingers, and I said, I can't remember. I said, if it's a group that was made up, but I thought there was a group later on that was called Dow Jones and the Industrial Averages.
I don't remember that one.
There was actually a punk band called Dow Jones and the Industrials. I looked it up.
Okay.
Oh, we got to finish off with a couple of other things. We have the All-NBA team. We have Juwan Howard Jr. at Detroit. Sean Kemp Jr. at Washington, Lamont Murray at Pepperdine, Larry Nance Jr. at Wyoming, and Reggie Theus Jr.
Oh, okay.
And the final one, Team Shaq Fu Schnickens.
What?
We have Shaquille Boga.
Okay.
We have Shaquille Clear. We have Shaq Goodwin. We have Shaquille Mitchell and Shaq White Miller.
Oh, okay.
We have the All-Shaquille team. That's the sporting news all-name team for this year, and I know all of you who are listening to this, both of you, are all better off for
it. That's for sure.
Now, John is nodded off. He's going,
this is about time to end this
This
nonsense.
is about time. We got to finish this off. We've got 2 minutes left.
When you
Do you
mentioned,
want anything else about the Cubs, since we have 2 minutes?
Well, actually, what I had was when you said B. Bumble and the Stingers, I was going to ask you if you had ever seen Bumblebee Bob perform.
No, I'd never seen
He's
Bumblebee
a white
Bob.
blues man.
No.
And he's a harmonica guy, and he's good, very good blues performer. He's probably deceased now, because it's probably been a good 20 years since I saw him, and I saw him down on Wells Street at U.S. Blues, and he was probably in his 60s or close to 70 then, so I'm sure he's probably passed by this time, but when you said B. Bumble, I wonder, and you're a music fan, I wondered if you'd ever run across
No,
Bumblebee
that one
Bob.
that one I didn't never heard of.
Okay.
I've heard.
What did you want to say about the Cubs? Or
I don't know.
nothing?
You got anything? I know we can't go through a week without something about the Cubs.
Hey,
Other than now, I guess we have to wait until 2015 or maybe 2016.
well, I told
before
you
we see anything.
about the gentleman I met at the airport, and he was going to go to a meeting with Joe Ricketts.
Yeah.
And to condense what was said, he said that if Joe Ricketts, who for those who don't know, because I didn't know at the time, Joe Ricketts is the founder of Ameritrade.
Ameritrade,
and
right.
he's the money behind the Ricketts who own the Cubs. That his children.
His children.
And this gentleman, again, to make a long story short, said that if it was Joe Ricketts, personally, he would not put his money into any sporting team. But because his children wanted to do it, that's what he decided to do.
How do you make $1 billion? How do you make $1 million in sports? Start out with $1 billion.
Yeah.
That's about all I can say. Well, let's wrap it up. Thanksgiving is coming up. We wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, happy, healthy Thanksgiving. And same to you there, Richard. Same to you, John. And
Thanks,
we'll
guys.
catch up on the next time we get together. Have a good one.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, edited by Stephen Lehman, and our audio engineer is James Rohde. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, November the 26th, year 2013. Be safe, and thanks for listening.